welcome to the Internet Podcast. I'm your host, Ed Parcaut, and today I sit down with financial expert Monica Kaufman. We're going to dive into the psychology of money, the realities of being a business owner, and the practical tips on financial empowerment, resilience, and planning for your future. Get ready for insights, real stories, and advice you can use. Let's get started. Monica Kaufman, thank you so much for coming on the Internet Podcast. I appreciate you being here today.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. No, I can't say everybody's going to know who you are because not everybody's going to know who you are on my show because they just aren't. So what's your background? I know you're a CFP, but you're also a CPA. Is that correct?
No, I'm a CFP. I'm also somebody who's taken a different approach to finance and financial empowerment. I think it's really a psychological issue. And the problem is that 80% of us are ignorant of the system. So I'm trying to take a baseball bat to the system by teaching regular people how to manage it and make it work for them.
Okay. And how long have you been doing CFP? CFP. Not everybody understands that because back in it got to a point where you could have a high school education and be a financial planner.
Yeah. And I don't think you need a college degree to be a financial planner, bluntly. Okay. You really need to understand the material. You need to understand people, and you need to have a clean head and clean ethics. And I don't think a college degree imparts that. But in truth, I've seen people without advanced degrees make millions and manage their money wisely. And I've seen people with advanced degrees blow themselves up financially. So I don't necessarily look for a degree unless it's for somebody like a doctor or a lawyer or a CPA.
Yeah. And back up a little, because back in the day, because I know a lot of people in the business that you do, and, some of them were at EF Hutton and they were during Black Monday, and they saw all the stuff and they picked up the phone and did cold calling and then, did real sales, where today that's not how it is.
No.
Where people go in and learn stuff. They don't learn it the hard way. They learn it and I don't know which is better, but it's really the most important thing is to have the knowledge needed to help understand what I'm trying to do.
Okay, so 2 observations. First of all, I became a financial advisor a little over 20 years ago. And I remember taking the Series 7. At that point, it was like a 7-hour extravaganza. And they haven't made the exam harder, but they are tired of having people fail it. So they broke it in half. And the failure rate is only going up. And it's because this next generation has not necessarily been taught how to think. So when I first started at Merrill, there was a woman advisor that had been there for 30 years. She was the largest advisor that had been in that office. And she had started off life as a waitress. She went back to work after having 5 children. And she was there and she watched some of the people who would go into the restaurant and bar. And she said, you know what, I can do what they do. She walked into Merrill at the time, or EF Hutton, and applied and got in. And she built a phenomenal business. She knew her stuff because she was able to think. And so I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think you just need to, it's a different person. I'm in the mortgage industry. Mm-hmm. They said there's only 40,000 of us who know anything in the industry in the whole United States. And I actually think that's a lot more than truly there are that can actually do it. I've been doing this for a while and I did it the hard way. I was giving people 9s when taking them from 13 to 9 and they loved me. And then in 2020 to 21, people were like, is that the best you can do? 2.75?
Oh my God. Yes. So I started off at Merrill and I was the only woman in my branch. I was not part of a team. There was nobody that fed me anything. It was not always so pleasant. And I had to learn on the job. But at that point, too, Merrill had standards, and they wouldn't let you necessarily go out and call yourself a financial advisor unless you hit their standards. And some other of the big firms have standards, other firms do not. And you can see it after a while. One of the things that bothers me is when I listen to people who call themselves financial advisors, and sometimes those are insurance agents. And I know they mean well, mostly, not always, but mostly they mean well. But they really don't know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, when you have people who don't know how to navigate the system, they've got all sorts of fears, they've got imposter syndrome, they've got a lack of faith that they can do what they need to do. And then they deal with somebody like that, they buy things they don't need or that don't work for them. and they waste money and they waste time. And so for me, I want to empower people to use the system. And actually, my hope at the end of the day is that one of the things that happens is that it forces advisors to be better and not just quote a marketing statement, not just use positioning and not just being strategic, but to actually really know their stuff because the clients and the market demands it. And I don't know about you, but the financial markets, according to Alliance Bernstein from several years ago, most people by 2030 won't be able to get to a financial advisor. They'll be dealing with robos. They won't have enough to be able to deal with that. Financial advisors are expensive for their firms. So the question is, how do you build up so that you get what you want? And how do you find the information you need? And then the other piece of it is human beings are human beings. How do we change our habits and change our behaviors outside of support? Most people need support and handholding and a community around them to get to that point of change where they can make it repeatable on a daily basis. So I'm with the consumer.
Well, I mean, we're all over the place today right now, but basically we're fine. I started that. I was the one that started, but basically this is internet is in our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. And we business owners and people who want to be in business. The question is, how can a financial advisor or what you do help business owners, in going forward? That's one of the questions, and we can get to it in a minute. But I just, this whole thing about how everything's going with AI and everything else, I think it's going to be more, people are going to want to come and see their people anymore, because they're going to want to make sure that you're an actual human and not AI or some robot that they can talk to. They want to actually come in and see people. The question is going to be, will we have the people available to be seen?
Well, and that's the question. And it's a question of actually finding those people. It's a challenge. And I'm with them. I don't want to deal with the bot. I really don't. I want to actually see a person, look them in the eyes, and sometimes, get that feeling I can trust them, or maybe I need to move on down the road. And I want to be able to tune into that emotional core and know that I've been seen and heard, and that I'm not just put into some sort of a cookie cutter type of a solution, because I'm not a cookie. I don't need to be cut like that. And I don't want to treat anybody else like that. So I'm 100% with you.
So how do we deal with this going forward? I mean, because that's what I see, that everything's becoming hyper local, where, because of forever, it was like, I want to be known nationwide, and this is what we can do. Now everybody wants to know who you are locally for them and how they can deal with you. And I think it's more important than ever to be in your community, to be seen and help your community. But also, how do we move forward and make sure that they're one of those people? And how is that going to happen in your market? Because we haven't even got into your psychology behind finance, all that kind of stuff that you talk about, and your Harmony Wealth Academy and all this stuff. But how do we get to how do we as individuals and businesses get to these people?
Okay, so that's the challenge. They used to say in the chamber, you go to who you know, like, and trust. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. First of all, my needs may not be the same as yours. Excuse me. Excuse me. My needs may not be the same as yours. Okay. The other thing is that just because somebody likes someone doesn't mean that they're getting what they need. Finance is something where when 80% of the population is technically financially illiterate, and that's the industry projection, chances are people may not know what they're actually talking about. People come and sit down in my office or sit down with me for planning only, when something has gone wrong in the advisory relationship. They have money and they cannot get what they need from their existing financial advisor, and they feel vulnerable. And I do this all the time. Okay, this is one of the things I do, and it's an opportunity to literally sit down with a client and educate them. And you would think, given their education or their success in life, that they would know this stuff. And part of the reason why they're so upset and feel so vulnerable is because they got taken advantage of, or they got manipulated, or they were disrespected, or it did not work out the way it was promised to for whatever reason. So they wind up with somebody like me. And I'm not the only one out there. I know I'm not the only one, but finding that is hard. And it's an interview process. It's not necessarily like, I was talking to somebody about this She said, oh, it's no like and trust. So I look at someone and I think they have money and they say they have money. And my response is, most people who have money don't flaunt it. Most people who have money don't waste it. Wealth whispers. And you know this and I know this. It's like people who project out wealth usually are not the ones with the account statements to back it up. And so it's not a real assessment. If somebody's driving around in a $90,000 car, my question is, tell me how that happened. Okay. There are people who do have that money, but most of the people who have it do not waste it. They just don't.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're looking at, what your definition of success is,
Right.
because it's all different. I interviewed somebody else on another podcast, and they're known as the McLaren lady or whatever. It's like, and they talked about how they took one asset and moved into this other asset because it was just a transfer. And then it's a way of thought. And I'm thinking, okay, well, so is sitting on a plane like Grant Cardone does and talk about everything. It's a different way, are you really successful, or is it a house of cards? The real question is, how long can you go without working? That's how successful you are.
Well, and that's the other thing that I'll say to people. What's your definition of financial freedom? And that usually stops them cold. And the first thing I'll say to them, financial freedom is when you can carry your load and do what you want to do without working. Okay. Once you hit that point, you're technically financially free. Okay. Now, here's the other piece that I'll say to people. Let's step back a little bit and define some things. So when you do physical fitness, you have to define what that looks like. So one of the frameworks that I've seen trainers use is, and I saw this on iFit, but they will use a framework that's 4 parts. You start off with function. Does every part of the body work properly? And then you get to the point of health when all the parts work properly together. Okay. You get to fitness when you're able to carry the load, whatever the load is. And then you get to performance when you can go beyond the load. Financial fitness is the same thing. Do all the pieces of your financial world work properly? Do they work properly together? Are you funding your goals and carrying the load, paying the bills? And then performance is, can you go beyond that? And it helps when people define it in real language, no jargon, nothing, but in real language that applies to them. So that's usually where I start with people. It's like, let's step back a little bit. If I know where I'm going, I have a better chance of getting you there.
Correct. I mean, that's why we ask all the questions we do. I have people call me and I'm asking all these questions. Like, some people think I'm being nosy. It's like, no, you don't understand. Our market's totally different now. There's 28 different things for your rate. It's not like it used to be back when I got in the business, where VA was one rate and FHA was this rate and conventional was this rate. Everything's so risk-based pricing. And the same with your industry changed. I mean, it went from, companies wanting to not have advisors, right? That one big company. And then now all they do is have advisors.
And then they're going to be losing advisors. Okay. So like, for example, a lot of people wind up, if they don't have a certain minimum asset level, they will wind up at a call center. One of the things that certain advisors will do in a couple of firms, not going to use names, is the advisors will say, I just don't want to deal with this client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send them off to the call center. And they won't even tell the client that they've been booted out to the call center. Even when there's enough money, they've hit the account minimum. And to me, I can't think of a bigger way to advertise that you don't want business and you don't care about the people you work with than to pull something like that. At least to have the courage and the integrity to call the person up and say, hey, look, you know what, this isn't a good fit. So I just want you to know, if you can't find another person, I'm going to put you into the call center until you find another person or not. That is your call. But we're no longer a good fit. How difficult is it to have that conversation? How much of a disrespect is it to your clients to treat them like that? The other thing that I find really difficult is that I don't know very many clients who can handle a book of business of more than 200 households. I know people who can't handle more than 125. I know that for some people that's considered the gold standard. So if you're talking to somebody and they're big and they've got the corner office, but they have 1,000 households, How many times do you think you're going to see that advisor other than when you sign on the dotted line?
Or they'll see their team, right? They have a team.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe because if you've got more than 500, how big is the team to be able to service that? How often can you spend the time and justify spending the time talking to these people? And I've seen books like that. I've seen advisors do that.
Yeah, because we're kind of going through that right now because I'm a vet and I have another podcast called Helping the Brave. And we've got into where we're going to start helping vets with their benefits, helping them in the whole thing. And that's the whole issue there is how are you able to help so many vets that need help with only being able to handle so many? Like the people who handle it now, same thing. Their book of business is 100, maybe if you're pushing it 150 on that they can handle at one time. Yep. My goal is to use AI so that we don't have to touch them that many times, that they can actually do it themselves with using AI and other stuff to actually answer the questions and get everything that they need to put their package together. So what I'm getting at is in order to do more, there is other ways to do it to help your clients. Well, do they really need, the problem with like Robinhood who came out, it was a great idea, but it was a gambling site.
A lot of times people treat stocks and bonds and investments as gambling. So one of the things that happened when people started day trading is that people started gambling on it. And then there were corrections and people were be wiped out. So the industry average at one point, or the expected average life of a day trader was about 9 to 10 months before their account was completely flat at zero.
What year was this?
That was probably about 2005, 2006.
Yeah, because I remember when my business partner was in 98 got into day trading. Mm-hmm. That was real big. They had all these different business, they had it was all brand new, and it had all these different places to go to learn how to day trade and all that stuff. Yeah.
And I remember I had neighbors who did that. And here's the thing with all of this. What I want people to do is to step back and understand that money is nothing more than a set of tools in your hands. And what I ask people is, what you do with your money is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. What do you want to build? What do you want your life to look like? Okay? Because if there's a different disconnect between what you're doing and what you say you want to produce, then we have to address the disconnect. Okay? Do you believe that you can be financially independent? I'll never forget, I got 2 referrals around about the same time. One was a couple, middle class. Neither one of them had ever earned more than $55,000 separately in the course of their marriage. And they had a disabled daughter. And the other one was a surgeon, and he had had a stroke. The surgeon before the stroke made a tremendous amount of money, but there was lifestyle creep. And by the time he had 4 kids and he had student loans to pay off, but if it wasn't for the disability insurance, he would have had a problem, a very serious problem. The other couple, they looked like they were blue collar. They lived very simple lives. You would never guess that they had what they had living where they did. And when they became clients, millions rolled over because they made a decision early in their marriage that they would live off one income, whatever it was, and invest the other. Any money that came in, small inheritances, whatever it was, immediately got invested. They were also the people, when you talk about owning your financial future and being radically responsible, they were the ones that they realized their daughter was disabled. They did what they had to do. They had their estate planning reviewed every 5 years. Everything was up to date. The life insurance inside of the estate plan was fully paid up. They literally were organized, methodical. They were in charge. You worked for them and understood that if they didn't understand something, you had to explain it, and they made the decisions. And to me, that's perfect because it demonstrates it can be done. I've seen other couples like this too. It's really just a decision. And then it's having the skills and having the emotional grit to be able to implement. One of the things that bothers me a lot is that we talk about resilience. What does resilience mean to you?
Well, what does it mean to you?
Well, to me, it's you get knocked down 6 times, you get back up, right?
Right.
Okay. So like Mr. Miyagi, I want people to learn so that they don't get knocked down. And then what I want, GRIT is an acronym for gratitude, resilience, instincts, and tenacity. So the gratitude, when you start with gratitude and you lead with that, It's amazing what you believe and the identity you assume that you can be, and how that will bring your subconscious into alignment and your behavior shifts. Okay. If you believe you can't do it, you can't. All right. That old saying, if you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're probably right. And then resilience is that ability to knock down and come back up. But the instincts and the tenacity come not only from learning something and not only from having the ability to hang on, but it comes from something that psychologists called adversity quotient. So we talk about intelligence quotient, emotional quotient. Adversity quotient is the ability to handle something that is challenging. And if you think about it, if you listen to Andrew Huberman, he talks about dopamine. And the more you demonstrate to your psyche that you can do, the more your dopamine resets higher and the harder the challenges can get. So if you start from the beginning, imagine trying to climb Mount Everest. There's no one that can go from 0 to the top of Mount Everest in one shot. They can't do it. You won't survive it. So what do you have to do? You have to work out and then get to Everest. You're there at the base. You may climb a little bit, but you don't make it up to base camp, and then you go home. The next time you come back, you may go up to base camp and then come down. Then you may go up to base camp and stay a while and acclimatize to the air. Eventually, you make the decision that you're ready to make the ascent. And not everybody survives that, but you have to acclimate to each stage along the way. And so that's part of all of this. And so when you understand that it's not about big bursts, it's about slow, steady, consistent action that gets you there. And that average people can get there if they make up their minds to do so. Regular people can learn what they need to learn about the financial system. It's not, it has a different language and it's a system, but it is 100% learnable.
Did you know that somebody just got to base camp last time I went straight up?
No, I didn't.
That's just recently. They were hypoxic. They were on some type of nitrogen or something before they got there, so that they were already at that level. So they could just, and they went, there was no waiting. They went right up. It was the first time and everybody's like upset about it.
They didn't earn it.
According to, yeah, well, whatever.
They outthought it.
Yeah,
So
they figured a way to do it, and
I don't know that I would be willing to try that. I'm not really sure that I would have that type of courage. I don't know it. I don't know that that's really sustainable until it's repeated. And I would not encourage anybody to necessarily repeat it.
Well, it's just it's the 4-minute mile was never broken, and then someone broke it, then everybody could break it.
That's true.
Right.
That is absolutely true.
So I understand what you're saying, though, these along the way. But one of the things you have to understand is if you're going to start a business or do anything, you have to understand money, because there is nothing like spending your own money when you own a business, because you can work for somebody thinking you watch the money amazing. And it's totally different when you actually own the business.
Right.
So you can upset people when you own a business, meaning that you got to focus on you and the company first and then pay everybody else separately. And, and that's just how that works.
Well, and moreover, too, you have to know enough about money. If you don't have two separate financial plans and projections, what's going to happen is if you don't really have control over your personal money, and if you're not managing that proactively, what's going to happen is your personal life is going to pull into the business and sink the business. And so that's something I look at people and I say, let's actually look at this and you need a business financial plan and you need a personal financial plan. And I'll bring in somebody who's, let's say, a fractional CFO or a CPA that's used to working with small businesses and say, do the business financial plan. I'll work on the personal, and I'll work on the change of behavior and structure and systems for them on the personal. But then once that's in, make sure that they're ready to go with the business. And if you're already in business and you're struggling, okay, there's no time like the present. We can't go backwards, but we can make changes now. So I want businesses to succeed. There's something about having the courage to go out there and do it that I just love. Don't let your money habits and systems tear that dream apart.
Do you believe the 50% of all businesses fail rule?
I thought it was slightly higher.
Well, I think it's a lie. First of all, the Small Business Administration has been pushing it for so long, because if they aren't needed,
Then there won't be a job. There won't be there.
Exactly. Because they count if, two people get together and they're like, hey, we should start a business on blah, blah, blah. And then they don't, that's counted as a failure. If they go pull a business license, right, and then decide not to go forward on it, there's a failure.
Right.
So we actually, when I was in college, it's how long ago, the first time I looked at this thing, and we went through every different thing. It's like, okay, so truly out of every business actually started, money in account, growing, how many of those actually fail? And I don't think it's anywhere close to what they think it is.
That's good to know. But what's really important for me is that so many people who own businesses don't think about, they think, and they're successful with the business and they do everything they can to keep the business going, but they don't plan for the what ifs. So I'll give you an example. Do people have disability insurance that could protect themselves? And do they have disability insurance that could protect the business? So if you're the key person on your business and you can't work, what happens to your business?
Should have key man insurance.
Right. But that's the whole piece of this. Like the first time I saw this, I was 17 years old. A cousin of ours owned a business, very successful, had a business partner. They were 50-50. He was the science brain, the partner was the business brain. And they came together and they built something. And every year at the end of the year, they had a business financial planning meeting. And they went through their numbers. And then they also went through their forward projections. And one of the things they did was they had a buy-sell arrangement and it was funded with life insurance with the disability rider. Okay. So late 80s, my cousin had a heart attack and he was fine. But based on the terms of the buy-sell arrangement, that kicked in, the insurance kicked in, and his 50% of the business was bought out. Okay, now you don't necessarily have to be that proactive on it. And today, given modern medicine with cardio issues, that would not have happened. But that was the idea. And that was the first time I saw it. And I remember just thinking, wow. And if you ever speak with or work with people who sell businesses, if something happens to that key person or the owner, it's like sharks in the water. It's not even 80% of the value of the business that somebody will get. So you need to actually plan for it. And then another thing that drives me crazy is that business owners don't necessarily plan for their own retirement.
They never do.
And that's a problem.
Or plan to sell the company. They never plan on any of that.
Right. And so that's one of those things that I look at people and I say, you have to manage both. You're literally walking on two legs, not one. Okay. If you have to walk on one leg, that's one thing, but you want to use something to stabilize you. You have to do this. Yeah. And this is about putting yourself first. You're running the business, but you work to live. You don't live to work. You don't want to be somebody who's in a position where you have to work. You must work into your 70s because you didn't take care of this now. And there are easy ways. If somebody's a solopreneur, that's another thing. Like if you understand the system, you understand which retirement accounts you want to take. So if I have a client who could potentially get sued, all right, for anything, I look at them and I'm like, okay, how would I, if they own their own business, and let's say they're solo, let's say they're a doctor, whatever it is, I look at that and I'm like, that's going to shift which retirement plan I'm going to look to put them into. Okay, so that's part of the equation. The goal is to use the system to make it work for you so that you get to where you need to be. And that's what I want people to do. These are tools. Don't let bad advice or, because so many people don't know this stuff, because we don't teach it, because we don't have it easily accessible in a reliable way, it's nobody's fault. So there's no shame. There's absolutely no shame. There's no reason for it.
So we said a lot of things today, but I think one of the most important things is to make sure that you have some type of key man insurance in place in case something happens to you. With disability. And this stuff's not cheap either in today's market, in today's world. It's a lot more expensive than you can think it is. So hopefully you have, your business is doing well enough to cover it. But actually, go ahead.
Let me make a suggestion to people. A couple of things that happen. So let's say you're planning on opening a business, but right now you're working for somebody else. One of the things that you can check on your own is call in and ask them if you have life insurance through your work, if it is portable or convertible. Now, portable and convertible options will have different pricing, but what that means is you can take it with you. And usually you're getting that at a group rate. If it's convertible, you might get it at a higher rate, but you don't have to go through underwriting. So for people who might have some medical issues or they're not as young as they were when they first got it, this makes it more affordable.
Are you talking health insurance?
Now I'm talking about life insurance and the life insurance that you might use. So if you want to provide for your family and you have that through your soon to be former employer, you can take that with you if you actually follow up on it and you do it. Most HR people don't even bring that up with people. And disability insurance, if you get it when you're young enough and you structure it properly, it can be done. It's more expensive if you do it on an individual basis.
Right. Yeah, because my wife works for Kaiser. She has all that with Kaiser. Even we added me on her life. They were like, "Hey, would you like to insure your husband for extra?" Sure. What the heck?
Yeah, and I think that's great. And that's something else too. I mean, it's the health insurance is expensive. That is the one that I think is really, truly prohibitively expensive. But that's a fact of life, and you have to know that before you go in there. The life insurance, the disability, I will tell people Social Security Administration estimates that 70% of us will have a disability event in our lifetimes. And so disability, if it's done correctly, that's something else. If you buy disability, do not give in to the temptation to deduct the expense. Because if you pay for something with pre-tax money, it's taxed when you take the benefit. If you pay for something with after-tax money, it's already been taxed and the benefit comes to you tax-free. In most cases, you have to watch for that, but by and large, that's the rule.
Yeah. So you're talking about 401ks, 403bs, and IRAs, or what are you talking about?
That's also with insurance. So if I buy my insurance, if I buy life insurance, for example, and I buy it and I use pre-tax money, if I deduct the expense of it, all right, that is taxed when I receive the proceeds.
Really? Did not know that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why, and disability insurance is the same way. So think about it this way. Let's say round number, somebody has an income of $100,000. They buy disability insurance through work and they're only able to cover 60% of the income. So you've already taken a 40% cut in your income. If you pay for that with pre-tax money, that $60,000 is taxed on the federal level. If you pay for that with after-tax money, it's not. You've already taken a hit. You're not working because something has happened, not your fault, medically, whatever. And all of a sudden, you're going to get taxed on that lower income level. That's hard. It makes it harder to survive. So that's the general rule.
Well, all these positive things today.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm just saying we need to focus on make sure you have key man insurance or key woman insurance, whatever you want to call it, key person. And then also check to see if your insurance transfers from your current work. If you're working and you're starting a business afterwards, see if you can take it with you. Yep. But just basically plan better is what we need. But the problem is with most people with businesses, they're so focused on keeping the business going. I mean, if you look at the last 20 years in the real estate and mortgage industry, like I was telling somebody else, they were like, should I get in the mortgage industry? I'm like, no, I don't think anybody should be in the mortgage industry or the real estate industry because it's very cyclical. And if you look at the last 20, the time I've been in it, you probably have 15 really bad years compared to the positive years.
I tell people who want to get into the financial industry that it is doable, but that it is a learning curve. Your license is not enough. So people get lower level licenses and I'm like, that's a start. That's not where you need to be. You don't know enough. And you have to make a commitment to constantly learn because the markets shift and things change. And because of that, the other thing that I'll tell people is it's very difficult to go it alone. And if you want to be in this industry, you probably will wind up being an employee. So you're not going to have that business. You're going to be an employee. And if you're not productive and you're not effective, or if you make mistakes that are costly over and over again, you're going to wind up not employable because firms can't afford that. So that's just part of it.
Yeah. My industry, you're going to see a change in our industry.
Mhm.
Eventually, kind of like what happened with your industry and other stuff, that it's going to get more and more people are going to be in-house. They're not necessarily going to be their own. I mean, there's a huge pushback right now to be brokers in my industry. Again, I've been a broker forever, but they kind of went away in 2008 because all the banks owned all the properties that were being taken back.
Right.
And so in order to qualify for that transaction, you had to go through their loan person.
Right. So they made a profit somewhere along the line.
They made so many profits.
Right.
Don't even get there.
I
The whole thing, they got paid for this. They got paid for this. They got paid for this. They made 3 times the amount of money they lost on each one of those deals, supposedly. And I'm just saying, it's just,
yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's happened. And the other piece of this is during COVID, and this is part of my big why. During COVID, the first week I had 42 appointments. 42 appointments. And I was at Goldman in the financial planning division, and I had 42 people. And a lot of these people made a lot of good money. Some of them were even at the Federal Reserve. Their firms were paying for them to have this service. And several of them were just overwhelmed. And it was like they hadn't done what they needed to do along the way with other things. And it was just one of those moments where I saw the fear in people's eyes. I saw the pain. I heard it in their voices. And the only thing that I can say is, it's not about intelligence. It's about emotional regulation. It's about making the shift from the patterns and the system that you've absorbed from the culture and probably from your families. Okay. And deciding that you're going to make that shift and living through the process of it. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's emotionally unnerving. But if you give people the support and you hold their hands with it, and most advisors are not allowed to do this and they're not paid to do this, you can get people through and you can help them make a shift. So I'll never forget, just real quick story. I had an accountant tell me, well, why don't you tell people, here's a worksheet on your budget. Why don't you tell me where your money is going? And you look through your bank statements and tell me how much you're spending in each category. And I looked him in the eyes and I said, because most of them won't do it. And he said, well, then how are you going to help them? And I said, here's a better idea. You flip the switch on their bank account, or you connect them to my eMoney financial planning service system, which is owned by Fidelity, and you connect any account that they use to pay for bills or to do any type of spending. And while they're shifting their mindset, you take the stress away. You say, we're going to let this run in the background and we'll have information down the road. You help them with the mindset shifts. You help them build financial defenses using systems intelligently to sort of make it harder for them to get knocked down or make it easier for them to get back up. And then after a month or two, when you have data, you say, okay, by category, where do you think your spending is or your percentage of spending is per month? Okay. I'm not asking for them to do any research, but I'm asking them once they're comfortable enough to say, yeah, I think I do this and I do that. Then you flip the switch and you let them see it. And you say, okay, where were you off? Where were you right? And once they see the data, it's like, okay, so tell me where you have an opportunity to make a change. Tell me where you can be strategic and shift your behavior. And let's start with doing like the blue sky method that's talked about in Atomic Habits, where you do 1%, 3%, 5% in different areas, and it cumulatively builds to produce change. Once you have emotional buy-in, and once they see the opportunity and they see it as an opportunity to make a difference, it's a lot easier to sustain. Okay. And if you're owning a business, unfortunately, you're going to have to do that on 2 different levels. You have to watch that bottom line. You have to know that cost to acquire a new client.
Yeah, I don't think people really understand the cost that it costs people to acquire a client. Everything's different. Every business is different.
Yep.
And, luckily, I'm just going to throw out the chat GPTs out there to help them now.
And Perplexity and all the other ones. There's all these
other ones. I've been dealing with chat GPT since November of 22.
Okay.
And so that's the one I know really, really well. And it just worked. And there are the other ones that are out there like you're talking about, but I just know it so well because I've been using it so much.
I've fallen in love with ChatGPT too on some things. I just have to watch very carefully. The problem with ChatGPT is it's pulling from other websites. So the question is, are those other websites accurate?
Right. Well, you always have to ask it to verify.
Right.
Because I use it for so many things, like even like people, I do bank statement loans for businesses and for individuals for different products. And I used to have to add all their stuff up, all the deposits and everything else. I just now just take their personal information off their bank statements, then drop it into ChatGPT and let it do it. And it's done in less than 2 minutes. And then I tell it to re-verify its numbers because it's been off by 20 grand before.
Oh, that can be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, just re-verify your numbers. Oh, I was wrong. Yes, you are. Because it's not perfect. It's AI.
Right. It's getting better and it's getting stronger. And if it can make you more efficient, there are things I do with AI too. And it cuts down the amount of time it takes for me to get certain things done. It just makes things more effective.
Yeah. I mean, I used to write a ton of pre-approval letters. Now I just have one that I just say, here's the information. I'll write it, copy, paste, done. Here, now my email, copy, paste, done. You know what I mean? It's like, used to take me half hour to 45 minutes to do each one. And now it takes me less than 2 minutes.
That's awesome.
And that's how it should, yeah.
Yeah. And not only does that make your life easier, it means you're more efficient and you can do more business with less effort. So you're moving into that performance thing. You're able to carry more of the load.
Right. And they made it so easy for us where as a person like me, we used to have to, during the pandemic, I was carrying 5 people just for me to do my volume. And I don't need those 5 people anymore.
That's awesome. I mean, it's difficult for them, but it makes you more profitable.
Yes. But it's also, don't have to do as many also if you don't want to,
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it just depends on what you want. And then some of these companies I deal with, they have people internally to run everything for us now where we don't have to handle it. It's like, I feel like an employee now.
Well, you're bringing them business. You're sort of a rainmaker.
No, I have no problem if it was an employee pay my taxes. Just kidding. I want it through the corporation.
Yeah, that's another thing people need to understand, that self-employment tax piece. That's something that I think really could be helpful. And I sort of wonder, one of the things that should be run is sort of a business financial advisory workshop where you actually have somebody talk about the cost of doing business and the accounting pieces so that somebody who's a new business or maybe somebody who's midway through their startup can actually get real information and real time tips to make it work and not spend a lot of time and wasting money. The other day, my accountant gave me a challenge. He asked me flat out, how much money does it cost for you to do business? What software are you using? What are your tools? What is the total cost of everything you have to use for me to get for me to be in business? And that was eye-opening to me because I just hadn't tracked it. So everybody needs a restart. Nobody is expected to be perfect. It's perfection. It's progress over perfection. And you build and build and build and you learn.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's out there, but there needs to be, so the bookkeepers are I think the fly in the ointment for most people, to get it to account. There's got to be an easier way with AI or something to be able to get that stuff in eventually, so it gets reached to the accountant.
That's the other thing. I have several bookkeepers that I hand out business to. And most of the time it's because the businesses are desperate. They can't find the help they need, or they've had a bad relationship, and the problem is that what happens is they wind up saving so much money in the long run by doing their books right and by not having to pay the higher cost per hour CPA to fix something.
No, I mean, because bookkeepers, I had one hurt me, supposedly did this, and then come to find out, 8 months later, it wasn't done. And we had moved and all the stuff went to the old address and they didn't lease that address out,
That's a problem.
Yeah. And so they go to lease it out almost a year later. Oh, we're sorry. Here is 6 months of mail. And in there's multiple IRS notices and stuff. And it's like,
oh, that's a problem.
Yeah. And the worst part is, they were certified. Why is the mail person just sliding it under the door?
Don't go there. Don't go there.
I'm going to say that's the problem right there. It should not have been done. It should have been sent back. And then they could have, they have your information for everything else.
I have problems all the time. Usually, again, clients wind up coming over to me because something went wrong along the way. And you know, I, I was working on something with a CPA today where something went wrong for a client. Okay. And it was something that their previous brokerage house, where their money, their investments, their actual rollover 401k was sitting, rollover IRA. And I wound up, there was a problem and there was a mistake. And getting that firm to correct the mistake to deal with the IRS is going to be a little bit, it's stupid. It's just remarkably stupid how much hell people go through.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I'm still dealing with mine. So
how long has this been going on?
about 8 months now.
That's painful. I'm so sorry.
And the problem is they went through multiple IRS people. Yeah.
Okay. That's,
yeah. Well, this person's no longer there. And then they didn't give that information to the next person. So we had to start all over again.
I'm sorry.
Well, what was worse than that? I haven't told anybody. I get a hit in my bank account. I'm like, what the heck? We had this working plan with the last person. Well, that person's not there any longer. And the next person had no information. So the easiest way for them to do it is to put a lien on your bank account. So you call them. I'm like, that's ridiculous. You just tied up money for a week because you hadn't. Why didn't you just send in a letter or a call? You had the person didn't transfer that information to the next IRS agent who came along to pick up the file.
I have such a problem with that. I hear the stories from the CPAs and from other people, and it's just the IRS has been badly run and badly mismanaged, and I genuinely don't know how to fix it. I'm grateful that's not my job.
Right. No.
Okay. And it's what do you do? You can't yell at yelling at somebody for something that's 100% not their fault is just it's not okay.
I had the same issue. I'm making payment plans on something and the payment plan didn't go through. Then I get a letter saying they're going to cancel my payment plan. So I call in and they're like, well, they talk to the first person, which takes almost an hour to get to. Then, you need to talk to billing. And then that takes 45 minutes on hold. And then they hang up on me. But the problem is there's some issue with the account they have. Well, why didn't they just send me the information or tell me to go back in there and reapply and re-update the whatever instead of threatening to cancel my payment plan? It's just, they don't care.
No, we've reached a point where people don't care and
and this is to me where I'm trying to do it right. I'm trying to get this stuff done. I don't like these situations. And so back to where you're talking about when they should have classes, I think people should keep and this is just me, keep the corporation C Corp, no longer S Corp, because the problem with an S Corp is that money all funnels to you into the year, whether you want it or not. And then you have the tax liability versus the company having the tax liability.
Without getting into tax,
that's the CPA thing, but
right. Okay. Yeah. But there's also, for me, one of the things that I look at people with business formation and structure, and this is just something, it's like, look, do not use your business bank account to pay personal bills.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, and people do it. Mm-hmm. I was in a meeting one time and it was a communications boot camp thing. And it was a build your business by building your ability to market. And it was a very interesting thing. And the presenter was great. But there was a woman in there who had one business that she had created an LLC for. She had an accountant that she hadn't told them that she was doing business under a different name and a different product. And she didn't have the website. She didn't have the trademark. She didn't have the LLC. She's like, well, I don't need an. And I said, you need a corporation for this business. And she looked at me and she's like, well, I don't need advice from you. I said, why aren't you talking to the person who you've been using? Well, why do I need to talk to him about that? And I looked at her and I was like, look, you're doing business under a different name. You don't know what your liability is. You could be using this name. Somebody could take the trademark and the website out from underneath you and then go after you. What are you doing? And we had this conversation. I said, you've got a professional advisor. Please go back and talk to this person, because she's like, well, I already have an LLC, but it's not for the same business. You're doing two different radical things. You have to stipulate what the business does. You may need more than one corporation. And she just looked at me like I was from another planet. I wasn't trying to hurt her feelings. I was trying to get her motivated to talk to the person she'd already hired. Give that person the chance to guide her. It's one of those things where it's like, look, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It really is. Be smart about what you're doing.
Bottom line, use your advisors like we talked about today.
Well, choose your advisors well. And if you're not getting what you need, find another advisor.
Right.
But be very careful with it. What I like to tell people is, look, success is a decision, and it's a decision every single day and in every single hour. It's a series of decisions. It's a process of getting better and stronger every step of the way. You can do it. And if you need someone to hold your hand, find that person. You don't have to do it alone. And there's nothing wrong with saying, this is something that's out of my wheelhouse. Who knows this? But, and when it comes to personal finance, that personal finance piece can pull you down and pull your business down. So when you're doing this, get the guidance and get what you need.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to see if I can actually run a business financial advisory workshop. And I'll talk about the business piece, the personal piece, and bring people in to talk about different aspects of the business piece. It'll be virtual, but I think that people really desperately need it.
I think so too. Monica, before we go, anything else you want to add today?
Okay, so one of the things that I want people to do is think about how they felt on April 15th. If you were happy with how you were doing with your goals, if you look at your business stuff and you're meeting every expectation and you're blowing it out of the water, great. But if you're not, and you want a pitch-free environment where someone can walk you through the psychology of achieving your goals and setting up systems that feed you and make it work, that is something that I do. I do it on the first Friday of every month. It is free. It is pitch-free. It is supportive. And it's literally an opportunity to be with other people who are committed to achieving their goals. That's it.
How do they find it?
I will give you the link and they can sign up. And again, it is completely free and there is no pitching.
All right, I'll look down below in the show notes. The link will be there when this gets posted. Monica, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for sharing. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Good. All right. Make it a great day.
You too.
All right. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Inner Edison Podcast. I want to thank Monica Kaufman for coming on and sharing her take on financial empowerment, business planning, building resilience for success. Remember to check the show notes for Monica's free goal setting workshop. Stay smart with your money. Keep striving for progress. Until next time, make it a great day.